Welcome to this week's Business Times Nigeria Weekly. This is a weekly podcast where we discuss key happenings in the world and how they affect you as a Nigerian, your pocket. The biggest issue globally and now coming home because I'm seeing it reflect in petrol prices is the US-Iran conflict and its effect on the energy market. So with me to discuss this today is Omono Okonkwo. Omono is an energy communications professional. Hi, Omono, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday. Saturday is usually for
Yeah,
sleep or rest or fun. So thank you for
yeah.
taking out the time to do this.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So let's shoot. I think the biggest question, and I've seen different answers to this, is Nigeria going to be making some extra money due to this conflict between the US and Iran? Some people say, well, crude oil forwards have been priced and all that. What do you say? Are we going to be making some extra money as a country? We come to the individual, but as a country, are we going to be making
hmm
some extra money from this conflict? I know it's conflict
well,
and it's sad, but we have to think about money. So I'm going to make some extra money from this.
Nigeria stands to benefit from higher prices, but in my opinion, that's actually the wrong thing to be excited about. Every dollar above the budget benchmark adds real naira to government revenues. And with Brent already tracking above $80, I think we yeah, of course, the arithmetic, the mathematics looks good on paper, but price is cyclical. Now, as you know, the Strait of Hormuz, right? If it reopens quickly and the Gulf LNG flows resume, those front month premiums unwind just as fast as they built up. So Nigeria will have celebrated a windfall that lasted just one news cycle, right? So for me, the deeper opportunity is structural, not cyclical. Now, what I mean by that is what this moment is really testing is whether Nigeria can position itself as a reliable alternative supplier, the kind of producer that non-Gulf buyers turn to rather, not just when prices spike, but permanently because they trust that the barrels will flow. Now, you and I know that Nigeria right now, our barrels are just not flowing like they were 12 years ago, 10 years ago. Now, this flow requires four things, okay? Production reliability, regulatory clarity under the PIA, operational stability in the Niger Delta, and credible gas infrastructure development. Now, Nigeria has struggled on all four counts, averaging closer to 1.6 million barrels per day against a target of 2.606 million, right? Now, the losses we've recorded are due to theft, vandalism, chronic underinvestment. Now, the countries that will win from this moment are not the ones with the highest prices on a spreadsheet document. They will be the ones that global buyers mentally file under dependable. Remember what I said about, Nigeria being positioned to cater to non-Gulf countries affected by this, right? So geography is a permanent advantage. Now, Nigeria's Atlantic facing position outside the Gulf's choke points is genuinely strategic, but geography alone will not help us to move barrels. Now, if the market permanently internalizes choke point risk, non-Gulf producers who can demonstrate stability will command a reliability premium that outlasts any conflict. Now, that is the real price, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not a price spike that will hand this to us. It is our seriousness in the sector that will hand this to us.
Okay. I mean, maybe a follow up on that. Some would say that I'm trying to avoid name, but some would say that the current administration has they've made some progress in terms of just being more nimble. I mean, look at the Seplat MPNU transaction that closed. It took years to close that, but close that.
Mhm.
Done as flawed as the PIA is, and yes, it has its flaws, and you have the recent executive orders trying to work on those weaknesses. Some would say we've made progress in the last 4 years,
Yeah.
um, being more friendly in the oil and gas space. And do you think that progress is sufficient enough to take the country to the spot whereby we can command a premium on our crude oil, as you stated? Have we done enough to command that premium? If not, what else do we need to do?
Yeah, we actually the executive order, the SEPLA deal, as well as the recent updates we're seeing on the policies as far as oil and gas is concerned in Nigeria. Those are all commendable, right? But like I said before, we're still dealing with theft, we're still dealing with vandalism. So if we're able to plug those problems, I think our production will go up. And if we are focused going forward on less mortgaging the future productions we're going to have to pay off debts, right? Then we can have something, we can see real progress in the sector. But yes, of course, the administration has done some, I mean, has made some progress, and I think it's commendable.
Okay. Then to the everyday Nigerian, and this one I would say particularly hits me in the sense that as soon as the conflict started, I knew pump prices were going to go up. So yes, like every rational human being went to buy petrol for the car, went to buy petrol for generator. Um,
Yes.
but the average person, they might say, look, we have a refinery now, the Dangote refinery is there, even though it doesn't supply the entirety of the market, it supplies a huge chunk. So we might say, look, um, why did we see an upward adjustment in price during the conflict? Is there a relationship between local petrol prices and global petrol prices?
Yeah, absolutely. And this link became very visible once the fuel subsidy was removed. Okay. When subsidy removal happened, the government essentially unshackled local pump prices from political management and exposed them to global market reality. Now, when NNPCL ended its role as sole off-taker from Dangote refinery, marketers had to buy directly from the refinery and sell at cost price, adding their own margins. And that is what triggered the price hike. The relationship works like this, okay? Nigeria imports or refines crude, and both processes are priced in dollars on global markets. When Brent crude rises, the cost of feedstock also rises. If you are importing refined products, you are also hit by the exchange rate. And you and I know what the exchange rate looks like as far as Naira dollar is concerned. Okay, so the Naira dollar dynamic amplifies every global crude price movement before it even gets to the pump. Now, a Nigerian driver essentially feels a compounded effect, right? Because global crude prices multiplied by Naira volatility. Now, the conflict in the Middle East adds another layer. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly a fifth of the world's oil. If that shipping route is disrupted, as it is, right, analysts say prices could soar, and that surge would be felt at petrol stations across Nigeria within days or weeks. Like what happened to me. I mean, on earlier this week, I think on Monday, I bought fuel for my car at 880 naira per litre, right? And then the next day, I was passing the front of the same fuel station I had bought fuel previous, and it had gone up to 975 naira, right? So, and that will reflect across not just Abuja, but several parts of the country, all parts of the country actually. And they will have it worse in the southeast and in the core north. Now, the honest reality is that Nigeria is now formally part of the global oil pricing system in a way it wasn't before subsidy removal. That is liberating in some ways and brutal, especially for low income Nigerians for whom fuel costs touch everything from transport fare to food prices. So yes, there is a link, and we are seeing everything unfold.
Okay. Um, then lastly, I'm not too sure of this, but it's something that I've pondered a bit on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the coming of the refinery, the current downstream players who used to import, margins probably will be a bit squeezed. But do you think that um, do you think that this conflict which is already leading to higher pump prices, would that give some respite? Would that give some respite to players in the downstream oil and gas space?
Okay, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking if the downstream players and Dangote refinery relationship is it going to what?
Is 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 um is the current crisis beneficial to downstream players? Does this conflict give them benefits in terms of higher margins? That happen?
Well, I think it depends on how you look at it, okay? So for legacy downstream players who built their businesses around importation and all that, it is an existential reckoning that is still unfolding. They're still navigating because, as you know, the Middle East crisis right now is still unfolding, right? We have no idea what the markets are going to look like on Monday. I mean, this coming Monday. Okay. So as everything happens, we are going to see different layers of reactions over here in the local market. So it's something that is still unfolding. And as far as uh, Africa's largest refinery, that is Dangote refinery, is they are exporting to America, right? While importers are shipping products into Nigeria from maybe Togo. Now, the reason for that is margins and inertia, right? So importation was a deeply embedded business model, and Dangote came to disrupt it, right? So even as the refinery scaled up, Nigerian marketers were still importing over 1 billion liters of petrol in June alone, while Dangote was simultaneously shipping petrol to the United States because local marketers weren't buying enough. Now, as a relationship in transition, that's the Dangote refinery and downstream players. The honest answer is that there is tension and there is opportunity. Now, Dangote has agreed an offtake framework with 12 major and independent marketers to supply between 60 and 65 million liters of petrol daily across the country, with any surplus estimated at 15 to 20 million liters exported. Now, on paper, that's a structured cooperative model, right? Dangote refines, marketers distribute. But as far as margins go, I would say that we need to watch the market closely and see how things unfold. This war could wrap up in less than a week, okay? But the war could also drag on for months on end. I mean, look at how Russia and Ukraine have played out in the last couple of years, right? So I think this whole situation is something that we can't just say, okay, yes, this is set in stone. We need to watch the situation. That's why I will refer back to my first answer to you. I said this is not something we should just sit down and celebrate and say, oh yeah, Nigeria is going to make a whole lot of money. It's there are several layers to this whole thing. When something happens in the global market, how it unfolds in the local market is dependent on everything that is happening second by second, minute by minute. At some point, crude price was about $73 per barrel, right? And now it's close to $90 per barrel. So you see, everything is moving in cycles. So that's why we can't say this is set in stone regarding local market realities. We have to keep watching and seeing how it unfolds and affects us down here in Nigeria.
Hmm. Okay. My last question would be every now and I mean I think in the last time the debate was particularly was around the whole debate. There's always this debate. Should Nigeria leave OPEC? Should Nigeria stay in OPEC?
Oh my God.
Some people feel say, oh well, look, if we have prices, let's just pump as much oil as we can. So remove the OPEC. Leaving OPEC means you don't have limits and barriers, so you can just pump your crude oil and sell, and then you use the money
Hmm.
yourself. And some people feel well, bargaining power, staying in OPEC is great for us. So where do you stand? I mean, it's early days yet, but if we see crude that say maybe persistently, who knows, 110, 120, um, should we leave OPEC or should we stay?
Hmm. This is I don't know if I am qualified to give an answer to this question because I don't pump, right? I don't drill. I obviously do not sell, okay? But I just work, you know, in communications, right? But looking at everything I've been reading and several analyses coming from several experts in the sector, I would say yes and no. Okay. Um, Being an OPEC member gives us, you know, street credibility, right, among other oil producers across the world, right? Like, oh yeah, Nigeria is a member of OPEC, right? But then, as far as production goes, I would say if this were 12 years ago or 15 years ago, when we were pumping a lot of oil and we were doing a lot to um get as many barrels as we could out of the ground and, into the market. I would say that would have been a great time to exit OPEC because then we didn't have major issues like deeper issues with vandalism and theft as we do now, right? So
Okay.
backdating the time would have been a great time to leave OPEC because then we had the capacity, we had the investment to pump as much as we could and get those barrels into the market. But as you and I know, right now, Nigeria is just not, we are not just there yet. All the OPEC stated production quotas we've been given in the last couple of years, we hardly met any of them. I don't know if you're familiar with the NUPRC reports and the reports
Yeah.
from OPEC regarding production, oil production.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that data to you, right? It's very poor. Other countries are pumping out a lot. We are not just meeting our quota. So even if we leave OPEC now by saying, okay, the reason we want to leave is because we want to pump as much as we can, are we even meeting the quota right now that OPEC has given to us? So I think people calling for that, I mean, I don't know how they are thinking about it, but from my own perspective, I think the perfect time to have exited OPEC, where we would have a lot more barrels going into the market, would have been 10, 12, 15 years ago when we're pumping as much as 2.5 million barrels per day. But now we're barely scratching 1.6 million.
Yeah.
And that's inclusive of what do you call the other one? There's something they
Condensates and
call the other one. What?
liquids and condensates.
Yeah, condensates, exactly. So you have crude, you have condensates, and you add them together, it gives you 1.6, 1.4, 1.5, 1.7. That's really poor. So the perfect time to have exited OPEC would have been several decades ago.
Okay. Then I'll take the last question, the previous question again, because there was some static, so that the person cutting and pasting can do it. The relationship between um, global crude oil prices and local crude oil prices. Just walk me through again.
Okay, global prices and local prices, global
Yeah.
events rather, and local
Yeah.
prices, right?
Local
Yeah.
prices.
So I said before, so I said when we still had subsidy, we still had fuel subsidy, we were kind of like insulated, not completely though, but we're kind of like insulated from, recording, uh, increase in local prices as fast as we saw it. Like I gave an example with my experience. I bought fuel, I filled my tank, 880 naira per liter at MRS, right, in Abuja here. And the next day, barely 24 hours later, it was up to 975. Okay. I know that a lot of people would say, oh, yes, you know how these people are now. When there is something, when there's a tension around Strait of Hormuz or something that just affects global shipping of this resource, fuel stations here in Nigeria, they just react quickly. But if something happens and the prices have reduced, you would hardly see a shift in the meter 24 hours
Yeah.
later, right? So now, I think for us over here, we need to insulate ourselves. Okay, and that means producing more and ensuring that what we have produced or what we will produce is not something that we have to give out to pay our debts that we're owing. I know you know about the deal NNPC made with some parties where
Yeah.
they mortgaged future production, future oil production. Now, if we're able to avoid that kind of situation, our production will definitely be on a better standing, because as it is now, we're barely producing enough and we're still owing some third parties that we have to pay with the crude that we have produced. So you see, even though some people will say, oh yes, the crude oil has gone up, the Brent crude rather has gone up to $90 per barrel because of what is happening between US and Iran. Are we really recording any progress without taking care or tackling all of our problems associated with vandalism and associated with oil theft, especially oil theft? I don't know if you read the report that Fisayo did on oil theft in the Niger Delta. He went for some here and he was able to, penetrate some of these creeks and all the people, the figures that are stealing our crude oil from the Niger Delta. He went really deep undercover and he brought out a lot of secrets, how these things are done, how they are connected, even to what do they call them? Security outfits, right? So this whole thing it has eaten deep into our system. Are we able to tackle that so that our production goes up? Because it doesn't matter if crude oil in the global market or Brent crude is $100 per barrel. If we are not producing enough and able to sell all that we have, emphasis on all, right? Then the purpose is defeated completely. So I don't think we should be rejoicing that, oh yeah, Brent crude is $90 per barrel. Where exactly is the oil? We're not producing enough. We've mortgaged some and we're not producing enough. So that there is the problem.
Okay, I mean, but maybe on the last note, last question, of playing devil's advocate. Um, we all know that this pipeline protection, some polo thing. I mean, I'm trying to be politically correct too. Um, some will argue, okay, as flawed as that arrangement is, and it's quite flawed, there's been some progress. Um, shouldn't we? I mean, there's word that that contract is going to be reviewed at some point in time. Should we scrap it totally? I mean, because you can argue that if you cannot have your own armed forces guiding, if you need a private company to do that, it's a problem. It's either your forces are not competent, or it's rather odd having a private person have to look after those things and all. So some will say, hey, with that, aren't we making progress? Isn't that helping in some way? Should we, I mean, even though I feel personally that let's scrap it and sort it out. But scrapping it, you're going to have violence, elections are coming, government will want that. But where do you stand on that? Has it been used? I mean, Tokolo, that crew will say, hey, production has gone up. Where, even though production is not where we can be, some people will argue that, well, you still have stealing going on, but they've helped, in quotes, reduce the stealing. Where do you stand on that?
Where I stand? Okay. um, well, let me start by saying this. I think the federal government has put itself in a precarious position. Why I said that is because Tom Polo is a man of the streets, all right, in the Niger Delta. He has a lot of parties, people working for him and protecting his interests. Now, imagine if the federal government wakes up tomorrow and says, oh, yeah, we're going to scrap this deal with Tom Polo, a deal that is going up to over 500 million naira, right? I mean, it's something that if they dare to do it, the consequences will be dire, which is why I believe they shouldn't have started it in the first place. Okay, because now they can't do it. They dare not. Like you said,
Mm.
elections are coming. If they imagine if they try to do it now, Tompolo is a man of the street. Even if he's not going to say anything or react, what about the boys under him that are collecting money from him to also protect the assets that he says he's protecting? What happens then when the money stops flowing? Can you imagine how catastrophic the consequences will be? Which is why I believe no government, whether in Nigeria or out of it, should ever empower people like that to protect assets that can easily be protected by the many forces we have in the country. We have the Nigerian military, we have the Nigeria police, we have the civil defense corps, we have all kinds of forces, and none of them can protect our assets. Is that really the situation here? Or do we find ourselves in a place where these armed forces, these people in the armed forces, they are maybe not well paid, not well compensated. And then when they are approached by the parties that, you know, take part in these oil thefts of a thing, they tell them, oh yeah, we'll give you this amount of money. And they're like, oh my God, I haven't seen such money in the last 6 months or in the last 1 year. And they say, oh yeah, well, I'll turn a blind eye, do your thing. Is that not something we need to tackle right from the local communities up to the federal level? Why do we need to empower people who are not in our armed forces to do this kind of thing? Yeah, of course. I like you said, maybe they're doing a great job. I do not have that information at this time. So I'm not going to speak on that. Okay. But do we really need to empower people outside of our armed forces to protect our oil and gas assets? I will leave that question hanging.
Mm. Okay, so I would also leave it hanging as well. The next time we speak on oil and
Yeah.
gas, I think 2026 is going to be an interesting year in the oil and gas space globally and locally. Petrol prices are around 1,000 naira and some fraction in Lagos here. So if this remains quite a while, if we start pushing 1, 2, 1, 3, people aren't going to be happy. So who knows? I hope maybe government will be tempted to bring back subsidy. Maybe government won't. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully not, because some people say if you reduce the subsidy at this point in time, when next you have to remove it, it's going to be even harder to do so. So hopefully not. So thank you, ma'am. Thank
Yeah,
you
you know,
for.
sorry to cut you off. I think you said 1,000 naira. Have you bothered to find out how much a liter of oil is going for in a place like Kano, for instance, or Anambra
Mhm.
or Imo State? Have you found out maybe between 2 days ago and today?
I haven't. I
Okay,
honestly
so
I haven't.
yeah, you
I
should.
haven't.
And then maybe you can do another edition and educate your watchers. So they'll know that things are not so bad in Lagos, because
Mm.
Lagos has the depot, they have everything, right? But places like Anambra, Imo, Kano, Gombe, Sokoto, you can imagine how much they're paying for a liter of fuel right now, as of today, March 7th, right? So I mean, as bad as it is in Lagos, just know that it's worse for some people in the deep parts of the north and also in the southeast. That's just what I wanted to say.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough thing, and I think at some point in time, eventually, because this is going to filter into inflation, transport fares, and CPSAs,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
things as they are. So it's a tough place. It's a tough place to be, and it's tough on the average man because prices going up 20, 30% in a week. That's a lot of adjustment for people to make, businesses especially. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to watch and see. Hopefully this. I mean, people are waiting for Trump and tackle, but it's going to be very difficult for him to unentangle himself from this conflict. I think it's going to be difficult for him to unentangle himself because I think it went a bit too far, really. What was this his original plan? Nobody knows. How is he going to get out of this? I find it hard. And the longer
Mm.
this stays on, or if things, and that's the thing about crisis, sometimes it ebbs, sometimes it escalates. The longer we have
Yeah.
this ebb escalates, the more pump price will go up. So it's going to be a tough year. I'd run to fill my tank because I knew this was going to happen. But when I think of it now, I'll spend the time sleeping because eventually I'm going to exhaust what I bought and I have to buy current prices. So, but that's
Yeah.
just the Nigerian. So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining. Hopefully, I would. There was some static here and there, but I'll send this ASAP to the tech person, the social media
Okay.
guy. If I was assuming we're in Lagos, because my plan was like this person is in Lagos, I just carry my tablet and move. But yeah, in Abuja, so big ups for that. And please send me well to Rolake. I'd reached out to Rolake at Kinkupe. And so Rolake said, hey, reach out to Omono. I didn't even know you were following me. I was like,
Ah.
oh. So I said, because Twitter is I mean, Elon Musk and everything. It's just, I just realized
It's
that.
crazy.
So I was like, this
Yeah.
person is actually following me. Okay, so I have hope. And now so like, okay, I can send a DM, like, okay, great. Because nowadays, sometimes you can send a DM, you follow and all those things. So
Yeah.
thank you, man, for joining me. Thank you for
When
sparing
when
your.
did when did Rolake tell you to do this?
This was
Was it this year?
it was this week. It was this week. It was
Oh, this week. Oh, okay.
3 or 4, 3 or 4 days. Because the thing is, I wanted somebody who understood oil and gas. And I also
Yeah.
wanted somebody who can speak because journalists in normal financial services firms, they are a bit cautious. And I don't blame them because they are covering the companies, they are paying you for coverage, paying you for one service, then you say this,
Oh,
the
so
next
so
thing.
someone like
So
me can't be cautious, right?
now
Don't
you
put me in
can, but
trouble.
it's different because at the very most, um, and also having kind of worked in media before, I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't ask a question that would put a potential client of yours in bad. So
Yeah.
that's why I was very careful with the Dangote thing. And I like how you answered it because I mean downstream guys don't like the guy. Some people say, well, it's a monopoly, this, that, but
Yeah,
reality,
downstream players are actually, very brutal when it comes to things like this. I know there was a time I was running a podcast for my former employer. That was like 3, 4 years ago, I think. And we had a guest. She's not even a Nigerian, right? She came in from South Africa, and she had some things to say. And I got emails after that episode aired on Spotify. I got emails and it was like, oh, what are you doing? We know you. We know when you started in this industry. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I had to like send, I and my boss, we had to like send apology emails to like a number of people. Like I had to
yeah,
directly appeal to a body where many of them were members, right? So I was like, come, it's not even my fault. Like I wasn't even the one who prepared the questions. I was just a middle person, right, in the whole
yeah,
shebang. So I
yeah,
know how downstream players can be. I know how downstream guys can be. They can be very reactive to things
yeah,
like this, which is why I don't want to say certain things. I don't want to call any names. I don't want to, present myself as, oh, Mrs. Know It All and all that and get myself into trouble with them. They are
oh,
and they
yeah.
are well connected. Okay? So I don't want any
I
problems or any trouble with
I get
people. Yeah.
that. I get that as well. I get that. So that was why I usually I'd send the questions ahead so people know. And I don't like hiding questions. Put them So
Yeah.
but by Monday, Tuesday next week we'll be ready I'll send you the draft before it goes as a standard.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
For
you.
me, I'm not a clickbaity. I don't do all those things. I'm not naming names, but people want clickbait. There are platforms that do that. I don't do that.
Okay.
I not name names, but we know who they are. Not naming names. People want to do clickbait drama. No, the aim for me is I want people to be educated and people know that yes, this is you get educated here. It's straight to the point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, there are no drinks and mics. I didn't mention this, so there are no drinks and mics here.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's simple
We'll
business.
go.
So I didn't mention
Okay.
it. So that's the aim
Oh,
for
I got
me.
drinks and mics.
That's the aim
Yeah.
for me. So I'm not from
Mm-hmm.
fluff and all those stuff.
Yeah.
Come here, they
Yeah,
educated.
everybody has their own platform and their end game and all that. So yeah. Yeah, I appreciate
So
it.
So
Okay.
thank you for joining me, and I'll send it as soon as it's ready. Before it goes, I'll let you know. Then one more thing I might need from you, maybe not now, but before it goes, we need the what do you call this headshot picture? Is it picture? I
Oh,
want to create
headshots.
like
Okay.
want to create a thumbnail. So we need a picture of yours. I'll show you a sample of
Mhm.
what we did in the previous episode, so you get me.
Okay.
I'll send you a
Okay, that's
sample.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, you
All
have my
right, ma'am.
WhatsApp, so yeah. All right.
I will send it via WhatsApp. Thank you and have a
Okay,
good
great.
rest of the weekend.
Yeah, you
All
too.
right.
Bye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.